I took my husband to the airport on a Thursday night. I thought it was just another work trip, but when I was about to start the car to go back, my 6-year-old son grabbed my arm so hard his nails dug into my skin. He whispered with eyes wide with terror, "Mommy, don't go back home, please." This morning, I heard Daddy talking on the phone. He's going to do something really bad to us. I felt my blood run cold, and that was when everything started. But before we continue, check if you're already subscribed to the channel and let us know in the comments where you're watching this video from. We love knowing how far our stories are reaching. The airport terminal was packed that night. Fluorescent lights reflected on the polished floor, while dozens of people moved with their luggage, rushing to not miss flights, hugging in emotional goodbyes. I stood there next to my husband Luke, trying to smile while he adjusted his carry-on bag on his shoulder. Luke had always been an impeccable man. That night, he wore a perfectly ironed navy blue dress shirt, his hair slicked back with that gel he loved, and that smile that won me over 8 years ago. To anyone looking from the outside, we were the perfect couple, the successful husband leaving for another important meeting, the dedicated wife who came to see him off, and the quiet son holding his mother's hand. But something was wrong. I just didn't know what. "It's just going to be a week, honey," Luke said, brushing his hand against my cheek with that usual gentleness. "When I get back, we'll go out to dinner, just the two of us. How about that?" I nodded, forcing a smile. "Sounds great." He crouched down to our son Peter's eye level. "And you, buddy, are you going to take good care of your mom for me?" Peter didn't answer. He just looked at his dad with an expression I had never seen before. It wasn't anger or sadness. It was fear, pure fear. "Peter, your dad is talking to you," I said softly, touching his shoulder. "Okay," Peter muttered, so quietly you could barely hear him. Luke laughed, messing up the boy's hair. "He's getting shy. Yeah, son, you're 6 years old. You're a little man already." He kissed Peter's forehead and stood up again. "Well, I gotta go. Will you guys be okay?" "We will. Have a good trip." I watched Luke cross the security gate, waving one last time before disappearing into the crowd. I took a deep breath. Another week alone with Peter. Nothing I wasn't already used to. Luke traveled a lot for work. At least that's what he always said. "Come on, kiddo, let's go home." We walked to the parking lot in silence. Peter held my hand, but unlike other times, he squeezed it hard. His little fingers were ice cold even in the heat of that summer night. I thought it was strange, but I didn't say anything. Peter had always been a quiet, introspective child. He would spend hours playing alone in his room, putting together puzzles or drawing. He never gave me any trouble. We got to the car. I opened the back door for Peter to get into his car seat, but he didn't move. He just stood there looking up at me with those huge brown eyes brimming with tears. "Peter, what's wrong, honey?" That was when he said the words that would change everything. "Mommy, don't go back home, please." I frowned in confusion. "What do you mean, sweetie?" "We have to go home. It's getting late. You have school tomorrow." "No," he screamed. And I had never heard Peter scream like that. His voice echoed through the empty parking lot. "We can't go back. Please, Mommy, believe me." My heart started racing. I knelt down in front of him, holding his shoulders. "Peter, you're scaring me. What happened?" Tears were streaming down his little face now. This morning I woke up early. I went to the kitchen to get water and I heard Daddy talking on the phone in his office." "And so what, honey? Daddy talks on the phone all the time." "No, Mommy, it wasn't like the other times." His voice trembled. "He was talking quietly, like when he doesn't want anyone to hear. And he said that after he went to the airport, someone was going to do something really bad to us." I felt like someone had dumped cold water down my back. "Peter, you must have misunderstood." "I didn't misunderstand," he screamed again, desperate. "He said this, 'When I'm on the plane, you can do it. Just wait until I'm far away.' And the other person asked, 'And what if they try to leave?' And Daddy said," he said. Peter sobbed, unable to continue. I picked him up, even though he was too heavy for that now. He buried his face in my neck, crying so hard his whole body shook. "He said what, my love? You can tell me." Between the sobs, I heard Peter's muffled voice. "He said we wouldn't be able to get out, that it would be fast. that we'd be sleeping and we wouldn't even notice. My world stopped. For a moment, I couldn't think of anything. I just held my son in my arms, feeling my heart beating so hard it felt like it was going to explode. Luke, my husband, the man who slept beside me every night, the father of my child, was planning what? To kill us. No, it couldn't be true. Peter was a child. Children have wild imaginations. He must have heard wrong, misinterpreted it, made up a story in his head. But when I looked into Peter's eyes, I saw something that made me doubt all those rational explanations. I saw truth. I saw genuine terror, and worse, I saw a plea. He was begging me to believe him. I remembered 3 weeks ago when Peter said he had seen a strange man standing in front of our house, just staring. I had brushed it off, thinking it was just childhood paranoia. I remembered 2 weeks ago when Peter asked me if Daddy still loved us. I had laughed, saying, "Of course he did. What a silly question." And I remembered a week ago when I woke up in the middle of the night and found Peter sitting in the hallway staring blankly at Luke's office door. "What are you doing up, Peter?" "Just looking, Mom." "Looking at what?" "Nothing. Can I sleep with you tonight?" All these signs, all these silent cries for help, and I had ignored every single one of them. "Mommy." Peter's small voice brought me back. "Do you believe me this time? This time?" The words cut like glass. How many times had my son tried to tell me something and I hadn't truly listened? I took a deep breath. My logical mind said this was absurd, but my instinct, that motherly instinct you learn never to ignore, was screaming that something was very, very wrong. "I believe you," I said. And it was the first time in weeks I saw relief on my son's face. I put Peter in the back seat and buckled his seatbelt with trembling hands. I sat in the driver's seat and closed the door. The silence inside the car was suffocating. I put the key in the ignition but didn't start the engine just yet. I needed to think. If Peter was right and every fiber of my being was starting to believe he was, then there was someone waiting for us at home. Someone Luke had sent to do something to us, something that would happen while we were sleeping. I looked at the dashboard clock. 9:45 p.m. Luke's flight would take off in half an hour. If his plan was for this to happen after he was in the air, we had an hour at most before... Before what? What exactly was waiting for us? I grabbed my phone. I thought about calling the cops, but to say what? That my 6-year-old son overheard a conversation and thinks his dad wants to hurt us? They'd think I was crazy, or worse, they'd tip Luke off. And if I was wrong, I would destroy my marriage over a massive misunderstanding. But what if I was right? "Mommy, we're not going home right." Peter's small voice came from the back seat. "No, baby, we're not." I started the engine. But instead of pulling out of the parking lot toward our house, I drove in the opposite direction. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I needed to stay away. I drove aimlessly for about 15 minutes, my mind racing faster than the car. I drove through a residential area, then past some closed shops until I found a dark, dead-end street hidden behind a cluster of old commercial buildings. It was the kind of place nobody would pass through at night. Perfect. I parked there, turning off all the car lights. From where we were, I could see the entrance to our gated community, which was about 200 yards away. If anyone went in or out, I would see it. "We're going to stay right here, Peter, just for a little bit, okay? Just to make sure everything is all right." He nodded, his eyes still red from crying so much. The silence returned. I kept staring at the community entrance, waiting. Part of me was praying that nothing would happen, that Peter had misunderstood, and I would be able to laugh about all of this tomorrow morning. But the other part of me, the part that was starting to wake up after years of being dormant, knew that something was about to happen. And I was right. It was exactly 10:30 p.m. when I saw the car. A black SUV with tinted windows slowly pulled up to the community entrance. It wasn't a car I recognized. Our neighbors drove sedans. One or two had imported cars, but nobody owned an SUV of that model. And definitely nobody drove around with windows so dark it was impossible to see who was inside. The car stopped for a moment at the gate. I waited to see if the guard would stop them, if he would ask for ID, do anything at all, but the gate simply opened. My stomach churned. "Mommy," Peter whispered from the back seat, "that car." "I know, sweetie. Stay quiet." The SUV rolled slowly into the neighborhood, following the main road, until it turned onto our street. My heart pounded when it slowed down right in front of our house. Our house, number 42. It couldn't be a coincidence. The car parked right there. For long seconds, nothing happened. Just that dark, sinister vehicle idling in front of the house where I had lived for 5 years. The house where Peter had learned to walk. The house where I had believed I was building a family. Then the doors opened. 2 men stepped out. Even from a distance, you could tell they weren't ordinary people. They wore dark clothes, black jeans, hooded jackets. One of them had a backpack on. The other was carrying something in his hand that I couldn't make out. They looked both ways, checking if anyone was watching. The street was completely deserted. All the neighbors were probably already inside, watching TV, eating dinner, living their normal lives, clueless to what was happening out there. That was when I saw something that made my blood freeze. One of the men pulled something out of his pocket, something small and metallic that gleamed under the dim glow of the street lamp. At first, I thought it was a gun, and my whole body braced to scream, to do something. But then I realized what it was. A key. He had a key to our house. The man walked up to the front gate and with all the calm in the world, slid the key into the lock. I heard the click, even from inside the car, even from this distance. Or maybe I just imagined it, but I saw the gate swing open smoothly, without resistance. "How does he have the key?" I muttered to myself, but even as I asked the question, I already knew the answer. Luke had given it to them. Only 3 people in the world had a key to our house. Me, Luke, and the spare copy that stayed locked in the drawer of Luke's desk in his office. The nausea I felt was so overwhelming, I had to roll down the car window to breathe. The cold night air rushed in, but it didn't help. Nothing would help, because now I was absolutely certain. My husband had planned this. He had given our key to strange men. He had told them to go into our house while Peter and I were supposed to be sleeping. The 2 men walked into the yard and stepped up to the front door. The same procedure. Key lock door opening. They walked into our house like they owned the place, like they had every right to be there. And then the door closed behind them. I sat paralyzed, staring at our house. From the outside, everything looked normal. The lights were off, just as I had left them when we left for the airport. The curtains were drawn. The garden I had watered that morning was quiet under the night breeze. But inside, there were 2 men, 2 strangers in my house. "Mommy, they went inside." Peter's voice was shaking. "What are they going to do?" "I don't know, baby." But I did. Deep down, I knew. Peter had heard Luke say it would be fast, that we would be sleeping. There was only one thing you do to sleeping people that is fast. I couldn't even finish the thought. I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I thought about calling the cops. This time I had real proof. I had men breaking into my house. It didn't matter that they had a key. They didn't live there. They had no authorization to be there. But before I could dial, something happened. A faint light appeared in one of the second-floor windows, Peter's bedroom window. The men had gone upstairs. I watched that light move, probably a flashlight going from one room to another. My bedroom, the bathroom, Luke's office, the living room. They were looking for something or someone. They needed to make sure the house was empty before doing whatever Luke had ordered them to do. 5 minutes went by, then 10. The light kept moving through the house. At one point, I saw the kitchen light turn on, then off. Then the office, then off again. "What are they looking for?" I whispered. It was Peter who answered with that terrifying clarity that children sometimes have. "Us, Mommy. They're looking for us." And he was right. Of course he was. They needed to confirm that we weren't there, that the plan had gone wrong somehow, that the wife and son who were supposed to be asleep in their beds were nowhere in the house. I imagined their confusion, their frustration, because whatever Luke had planned couldn't be executed if we weren't there. I kept watching. The light was back on the ground floor now in the living room. I saw shadows moving behind the curtains. Then everything went dark again. I thought maybe they would leave, that they would give up and call Luke, telling him the job couldn't be done. But that wasn't what happened. One of the men appeared at the kitchen window. I saw clearly when he opened something it looked like a jug. He poured the contents somewhere I couldn't see. Then he moved to the living room. He did the same thing, and that was when the smell reached me. Even from inside the car, even 200 yards away, I caught a strong chemical scent that reminded me of a gas station. Gasoline. They were pouring gasoline all over our house. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." That was when I saw the flash. Small at first, just a spark in the living room window, but it grew fast, terrifyingly fast. In a matter of seconds, I saw orange flames licking the curtains. The window glass shattered from the heat, and the flames leaped outside, climbing up the exterior wall. They had set our house on fire. A scream got stuck in my throat. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. In the back seat, I heard Peter start to cry. "Our house, Mommy, our house is on fire." I couldn't answer. I just watched in horror as the flames spread. Peter's bedroom window blew out. Thick black smoke began to rise, underlit by the sinister glow of the fire. Everything we owned was in there. Peter's clothes, his toys, our family photos, the blanket my mother had made for me before she died, the drawings Peter had made at school. Memories, a whole life, all turning to ash. But worse than that, much worse, was the realization of what would have happened if we had gone home. We would have been asleep. Peter in his little room with his stuffed dinosaurs. Me in my room, probably reading before bed, calm, unaware. And then the fire would start. Maybe we would wake up from the smoke, or maybe not. Maybe the smoke would knock us out before we even realized the danger. And then it would just be a tragedy, a horrible accident. A mother and son killed in a house fire, while the husband and father was away on a business trip. The perfect alibi. The front doors of our house burst open suddenly. The two men ran out, coughing, clearly affected by the smoke. But they didn't look scared. They looked rushed, like men who had a job to finish and didn't want to waste time. They jumped into the SUV quickly. The engine revved and the car sped off, turning the corner and vanishing into the night. I sat there, watching our house burn. The flames had already consumed almost the entire second floor. The roof was starting to cave in. Neighbors were coming out of their houses now, some screaming, others running to help. I heard sirens in the distance. Someone had called the fire department. But it was too late. Too late to save the house. Too late to save anything. "Mommy," Peter sobbed. Daddy told them to do this." I looked at my son through the rearview mirror. His little face was wet with tears, illuminated by the distant glow of the fire. He was so small, so innocent, and he had tried to warn me. "Yes, my love," I replied, my voice choking up. "He sent them." Why did we do something wrong? That question shattered my heart into pieces. "No, baby, we didn't do anything wrong. None of this is your fault. It never was." My phone buzzed in my still trembling hands. I looked at the screen. It was a text from Luke. "Honey just landed. I hope you and Peter are sleeping well. I'll call first thing tomorrow. Love you both." I read the message 3 times. Every word was like a knife wound. Sleeping well. He knew exactly what was happening in that moment. He knew our house was in flames, that men he had hired had just tried to kill us. And yet he sent this text building his alibi, playing the loving, worried husband who would call tomorrow morning and discover the tragedy. I threw the phone onto the passenger seat so hard it bounced and fell onto the floorboard. I didn't care. I sat there for another 40 minutes, watching the firefighters try to control the blaze. By this point, several neighbors were out on the street. I recognized Mrs. Helen, who lived 3 doors down, Mr. Robert, who always complained about our dog, a dog that was now probably dead, trapped somewhere inside that inferno, the Miller family with their 2 young kids, watching in absolute horror. All of them thought it was an accident, a random tragedy. None of them knew the truth, and I couldn't tell them. Not yet. Because if I showed up now, If I ran over there screaming that we were alive, Luke would find out. The men he hired would find out. And then what? They would try again. And next time, we wouldn't be lucky enough to have a son who overheard the wrong conversation at the right time. I needed to think. I needed a plan. "Mommy, are we going to stay here all night?" Peter's voice was exhausted now. The shock was giving way to sheer exhaustion. "No, baby, we're leaving." But where to? I couldn't go to friends' houses. They all knew Luke. They trusted him. I couldn't go to family. My parents had died years ago, and the few aunts and cousins I had lived far away and wouldn't be able to help me against a man like Luke. Luke was respected, successful. Everyone we knew thought he was perfect, the ideal husband, the devoted father. If I showed up saying he had tried to kill us, who would believe me? I started the car and slowly pulled out of that dark street, driving in the opposite direction of the neighborhood. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I needed to get far away. I ended up driving aimlessly through the city for almost an hour. Peter had fallen asleep in the back, exhausted from crying. I envied that ability children have to just shut down when everything becomes too much. My mind wouldn't stop. It spun and spun, trying to understand why. Why would Luke do this? We were happy, or at least I thought we were. He had never been violent. He had never threatened me. He had never shown signs that he was capable of something like this. Or had he? I started remembering little things that didn't seem important at the time. 3 months ago, Luke had insisted I sign some papers. "It's just a power of attorney, honey. In case anything happens to me, you'll have access to my accounts." I had signed without really reading them. I trusted him. 2 months ago, he had taken out a life insurance policy, a massive one. "It's to protect you guys," he'd said. "If anything happens to me, you'll be fine." I thought it was weird at the time. Luke was young, healthy, but he pushed so hard I eventually agreed. And a month ago, he started traveling more, much more. Business opportunities, he called them. But now I wondered, was it really business? Or was he planning this, building alibis, establishing a pattern of frequent travel so that when it happened, no one would suspect a thing? Everything clicked now. Everything made a horrific, perfect sense. I pulled into a 24-hour gas station on the outskirts of the city. I needed time to think, and I needed to check something. Carefully, so I wouldn't wake Peter, I picked my phone up off the floorboard. I had lost count of how many notifications had popped up. Messages from neighbors, from the HOA president, even from people I barely knew, all asking if I was okay, if Peter and I were home when it happened, if I needed help. I ignored them all and went straight to my emails. I searched for life insurance. I found the policy Luke had set up. I opened the document and started reading. My eyes scanned the lines of legal jargon until I found the amount. $2 million. My stomach churned. $2 million in the event of the accidental death of his wife and son. I kept reading. The policy had been finalized exactly 6 weeks ago. It had a 30-day waiting period that had already passed, and the beneficiary in the event of our deaths was Luke. Of course. I rested my forehead against the steering wheel, feeling a wave of nausea so strong, I thought I was going to throw up right there. $2 million. That was it. That's what we were to him. We weren't family. We weren't people he loved. We were an investment, a problem to be solved, a path to easy money. How many times had he looked at me with those loving eyes, kissed me, told me he loved me, while he was already plotting how to kill us? How much time had he spent researching, looking for people to do the dirty work, calculating the perfect moment? And Peter, my God, Peter, his own son, the child he had held in his arms when he was born, who he had taught to walk, who he had read bedtime stories to. How does a man become capable of that? There was no answer. Maybe there never would be. The phone buzzed again. Another text. This time it wasn't from Luke, it was from an unknown number. "Congratulations on escaping, but not for long. He'll find out, and when he does, there won't be a place in the world where you can hide." My blood ran cold. I dropped the phone like it was on fire. They knew. Somehow they knew we weren't dead, and they were warning me. I looked around the gas station. It was almost empty, just a sleepy cashier and a trucker fueling up. But suddenly, every shadow felt threatening. Every parked car could have someone watching me. I needed to get out of there. I needed help. Real help. That was when I remembered. Years ago, when my dad was still alive, he had a lawyer, a woman named Dr. Mariana. She had helped my family with the inheritance when my grandfather died. She was discreet, brilliant, and my father trusted her completely. If you ever have a massive problem, my dad had told me once, a problem you can't tell anyone about, go to Dr. Mariana. She'll know what to do. At the time, I thought it was strange. What kind of problem would be so big that I couldn't tell anyone? But now I understood. Now I had exactly that kind of problem. I grabbed the phone again, ignoring the threatening text. I scrolled through my old contacts, the ones I had transferred from phone to phone over the years, without ever deleting them. And there it was, Dr. Mariana Silva. The number was from years ago. It might not even work anymore, but it was my only shot. I dialed. It was almost 2 a.m. She probably wouldn't even answer. And if she did, she'd probably tell me to call back during business hours. The phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times. On the 5th ring, someone picked up. Hello? The voice was female, alert despite the hour. It wasn't the voice of someone who had just woken up. It was the voice of someone expecting an important call. Dr. Mariana, this is Julia. Julia Ferreira, Robert Ferreira's daughter. There was a pause. Julia, how many years has it been? 5, 6. 7, I replied. Since my father's funeral. Yes, I'm sorry for your loss, even after all this time. Her voice was gentle but professional. What makes you call me at 2 a.m., Julia? I took a deep breath. My husband tried to kill me and my son, and I don't know what to do. Silence on the other end. But it wasn't the silence of shock or disbelief. It was the silence of someone processing information, already shifting into problem-solving mode. Where are you right now? At a gas station on the highway, heading out of the city. Are you alone? No, my son is with me. He's 6. Does your husband know where you are? No, he thinks we're dead. Good. Her voice grew firmer. That buys us time. Listen closely, Julia. Do not go home. Do not call friends or family. Do not use your credit cards. Do not post anything on social media. Do you understand? Yes. Which gas station are you at exactly? I looked around and gave her the name. All right, stay right there. In exactly 40 minutes, a car will pull up. A silver Honda Civic. The license plate ends in 377. The person driving is named Teresa. She's going to bring you and your son to a safe house. You can trust her. How do you... Julia, your father asked me to look out for you if anything ever happened to him. I made a promise, and I always keep my promises. She paused. 40 minutes. Do not leave the car until the Civic gets there. And Julia... Yes, you did the right thing calling me. We're going to fix this, but you need to trust me completely. Can you do that? I looked back at Peter sleeping in the back seat, my son, my only child. The kid who had saved our lives today with his courage to tell me what he heard, even knowing I might not believe him. I can, I replied. Exactly 38 minutes later, I saw the silver Honda Civic pull into the gas station. The plate ended in 377, just like Dr. Mariana had said. A woman in her 40s stepped out of the car, black hair tied back in a ponytail, simple clothes, jeans, and a black shirt. She looked like an ordinary person, but there was something in the way she moved, the way her eyes scanned the perimeter, that told me she was anything but ordinary. She walked up to my car and tapped lightly on the glass. I rolled it down. Julia? She asked in a low voice. Yes. I'm Teresa. Let's get out of here. To where? To a safe place. That's all you need to know for now. She glanced at Peter in the back. Is he asleep? Yes. All right. I'll drive your car. You sit in the passenger seat. It's less suspicious than swapping vehicles out in the open. It made sense. I got out of the driver's seat and moved over. Teresa slid in with efficient movements, adjusted the seat and mirrors, and pulled out of the station without rushing, as if we had all the time in the world. We drove in silence for about 20 minutes. She checked the mirrors constantly, made random turns, doubled back on streets we had already gone down. She was making absolutely sure no one was following us. "Nobody's on our tail," she finally said, more to herself than to me. "Who are you?" I asked. "How do you know Dr. Mariana?" "I've worked with her for 12 years. She handles the legal side. I handle other things." "What other things?" Teresa shot me a quick glance. "Protection, investigation. Sometimes I solve problems that lawyers can't fix with paperwork alone." "So you're like a private investigator?" "Something like that." She didn't elaborate, and I realized I shouldn't push it. We arrived at an older apartment building downtown. Teresa parked in an underground garage and led me to an elevator. We rode up to the 4th floor in silence. The apartment was small and bare bones. Functional furniture, zero decorations. It looked more like an office someone had temporarily converted into a living space than a real home. "You can rest here," Teresa said, pointing to a sofa. "There's a bedroom right there. You can put your boy in bed." I carried Peter, who was still sound asleep, into the bedroom. It was tiny, just a twin bed and a wardrobe. I laid him down gently, took off his shoes, and covered him with a blanket folded at the foot of the bed. I stood there for a moment, just watching him. So small, so innocent. He had saved our lives today. If it wasn't for him, we'd be dead. I walked back out to the living room. Teresa was sitting in a chair, typing away on a laptop. "Doctor, Mariana will be here in a few hours," she said without taking her eyes off a screen. "In the meantime, I need you to tell me everything, from the beginning." And I did. I told her about Luke's trip, about what Peter heard, about my decision to believe him, about the men with the key, the fire, the life insurance policy, the threatening text. Teresa listened without interrupting, just taking notes every now and then. When I finished, she shut the laptop. $2 million in life insurance," she said thoughtfully. "That's a lot of money." "It's not just about the money," I replied. "It can't be. Luke makes a good living. We have a comfortable life." "Are you sure about that?" She frowned. "What do you mean?" "Do you have access to his accounts? Do you actually know how much he makes? How much he spends?" I stopped to think. No, I didn't. Luke had always handled the finances. He always said it was so I wouldn't have to worry about those things, that he had it all under control. "No," I admitted. "He always took care of that." Teresa nodded as if she already knew the answer. "I'll look into it. By tomorrow morning, we'll know exactly what your husband's financial situation is, and I bet we're going to find some serious problems." It made sense. Desperate people do desperate things, and murdering your own family for insurance money was definitely an act of desperation. "And the text?" I asked. "That message saying they know we got away. Could be the guys he hired. They realized the house was empty and tipped off your husband. Or it could just be a bluff to scare you." Teresa looked me dead in the eye. "Either way, they're going to find out you're alive soon enough. When the fire department finishes sifting through the rubble and doesn't find any bodies, they'll declare you missing. Your husband's going to find out, and then he's going to make a move. He'll pretend to be frantic, searching for you. He'll use the media, social media, everything. He'll play the concerned husband, and he will be looking for you for real, not to save you, but to finish the job." The fear that had been numbed by adrenaline came rushing back full force. "What do I do?" "Nothing. You stay hidden. Let Dr. Mariana and me handle this. We have experience with these kinds of situations." "What kinds of situations?" Teresa hesitated before answering. "Women in danger, children in danger. It's not the first time we've dealt with husbands trying to kill their wives, and sadly, it probably won't be the last." I didn't know if that brought me comfort or terrified me more. I spent the rest of the night awake on the couch, unable to sleep. Every creak in the hallway made my heart race. Every car driving by on the street outside could be them coming to get us. Teresa eventually fell asleep in the chair, but even in her sleep, she seemed alert, like a trained soldier ready to wake up at the slightest sign of danger. When the sun finally started to rise, lighting up the city through the drawn curtains, I heard a key turn in the lock. Teresa woke up instantly, her hand dropping to her waist. A gun, I realized with a shock. But she relaxed when she saw who was walking in. It was Dr. Mariana. She looked exactly as I remembered her, a woman in her 50s, gray hair cut into a sleek bob, thin-rimmed glasses, a flawless pantsuit even at this hour of the morning. She looked like a lawyer straight out of a business magazine. But when she looked at me, I saw something beyond just a competent professional. I saw compassion and grit. "Julia," she said, setting her briefcase down on the table. "I am so sorry for what you're going through, but I want you to know you are not alone in this." I felt tears burning in my eyes. They were the first kind words I had heard since this whole nightmare began. "Thank you," I managed to say. Teresa brought her up to speed. "I spent the night digging into your husband." She opened the briefcase and pulled out several documents. And what I found, well, it explains a lot. "What is it?" Dr. Mariana slid the first document in front of me. It was a bank statement. Luke is broke, completely bankrupt. He's over $500,000 in debt. I stared at the numbers in disbelief. How was that possible? We lived well. We never went without. How? Gambling bling, mostly online betting. Started small a couple of years ago, kept getting worse. He took out loans from loan sharks to cover his losses. When he couldn't pay them back, he took out more loans to pay the first ones. She pointed to various transactions. It's a vicious cycle, and he was drowning. My head was spinning. Gambling. Luke had never even mentioned liking games of chance. Never. "There's more," Dr. Mariana continued. "He also took out a second mortgage on your house, using it as collateral. Without your knowledge, I presume." "How could he do that without my signature? Remember that power of attorney you signed 3 months ago? The one he said was just in case something happened to him?" Dr. Mariana gave me a pointed look. "It gave him the power to sign documents in your name." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. He had played me. He had planned everything. "The house is mortgaged to the hilt," she went on. "If he doesn't pay those loans in the next 3 months, you lose everything. Or rather, you would have because the house doesn't exist anymore. But the homeowner's insurance policy also lists him as the sole beneficiary. The insurance company is going to pay out the claim to him." Dr. Mariana gathered the papers. "Julia, I'm going to be blunt. Luke engineered the perfect plan. He kills both of you in an accidental fire. He collects $2 million from the life insurance, plus another $500,000 from the property insurance. He pays off all his debts and still walks away with enough cash to start a brand new life somewhere else." "He would destroy our family for money," I whispered. "People do much worse for a lot less," Teresa chimed in. I spent the next 3 days locked inside that apartment. I couldn't go out, I couldn't call anyone. I couldn't even look out the window for fear someone might spot me. Peter was confused and scared. He didn't understand why we had to stay in hiding, why we couldn't go back home, why Daddy was looking for us on the news like he was worried when we knew the truth. Because yes, Luke was looking for us, and he was putting on quite the show. Teresa showed me the news reports, Luke giving interviews, crying in front of the cameras, begging anyone who had seen his missing wife and child to come forward. He offered a reward. He set up social media pages, mobilized volunteers for search parties. It was sickening to watch. That man weeping on TV was the exact same man who had hired thugs to burn us alive. "He's good at this," Teresa remarked, turning off the TV. "Really good. You almost want to believe he actually gives a damn." "How does he do it?" I asked. "How can he lie like that?" "Practice," Dr. Mariana replied. She had been coming by every day bringing updates. People like him have been lying for so long, they don't even know the difference between truth and fiction anymore. To him right now, the performance is reality. But while Luke was putting on his public theater, Dr. Mariana and Teresa were working behind the scenes, investigating, gathering evidence, building a case. "We found the guys who torched your house," Teresa told me on the 3rd day. Well, one of them. The other skipped town. But the one who stayed, let's just say he's highly motivated to talk. Talk about what? About who hired him, about how much he got paid, about the specific instructions he was given. Teresa smiled a humorless grin. See, guns for hire aren't exactly known for their loyalty. Once he realized the job went south and he was going to end up taking the fall alone, he became very interested in making a deal. So we have proof. Proof that Luke hired him. We have text messages, wire transfers, audio recordings of calls he made. Apparently, our guy liked to record his conversations as an insurance policy, just in case the boss tried to screw him over. Dr. Mariana steepled her fingers. Julia, we have enough evidence to put Luke in handcuffs today. My heart raced. Then why don't you? Because we want more than just getting him on a murder-for-hire charge, Dr. Mariana answered. We want him for attempted murder. We want him to confess. And for that, we need a strategy. That was when she laid out the plan. Luke was desperate, not just because the plan failed, but because the debts were still piling up. The loan sharks didn't care that his wife and kid were missing. They wanted their money. And without the bodies, without death certificates, Luke couldn't collect the insurance payout. He's being squeezed from every angle, Dr. Mariana explained, and desperate people make mistakes. We need to push him into making a mistake so massive he can't deny it. How? By making him think he found you. The plan was straightforward, but incredibly risky. Dr. Mariana had a contact in the police department, a detective she had worked with on past cases who was completely trustworthy. He was going to leak a piece of intel, suggesting he had a lead on Julia and Peter's whereabouts, that maybe they were hiding out at a remote cabin owned by her family. It was a lie, obviously, but Luke wouldn't know that. If he truly wants you dead, Dr. Mariana said, he's going to act. He's going to try to get to you before the cops do, and when he makes his move, we'll be waiting. Teresa finished the thought. And where am I going to be? I asked. At the actual cabin. Dr. Mariana looked at me dead serious. You're going to be the bait, Julia. It's the only way to get him to confess. My blood ran cold. He's going to try to kill me again? No, he won't get the chance. Because Teresa and a full tactical team will be right there, hidden, filming everything, recording every word. She leaned forward. We need him to say in plain English that he wants you dead. We need him to threaten you directly. With raw video and audio proof, there isn't a lawyer on earth who can save him. What if something goes wrong? It won't, Teresa said with absolute conviction. I'll be less than 10 feet away from you the entire time, armed and ready. The second he makes a threatening move, it's over. I looked at the two women. They seemed so sure, so confident. But all I could think was, what if it isn't enough? What if Luke is faster, smarter? And Peter, I asked, where is he going to be during all this? Right here, with security guards I trust with my life, Dr. Mariana replied. He won't be in any danger, I promise you. I closed my eyes. Everything inside me screamed that this was a terrible idea, that it was way too risky, that we should just take the evidence we had straight to the police and let the justice system do its job. But I knew it wasn't enough. Evidence could be challenged, witnesses could be discredited, a slick defense attorney could spin reasonable doubt. But a live confession, a direct threat caught on tape, that was bulletproof. Okay, I said finally, let's do it. 2 days later, I was sitting alone in a rustic cabin out in the middle of nowhere. It was a property that had belonged to my grandparents, one I had almost forgotten existed. Small, isolated, surrounded by woods, perfect for an ambush. Teresa and 3 other security operatives were hidden in strategic positions around the property. There were cameras rigged in every room, hidden microphones, everything would be captured. I was dressed in basic clothes, jeans and a t-shirt, wearing no makeup, looking exactly like someone who had spent days hiding in sheer terror, because that's exactly what I was. The plan was for me to just sit there and wait, making it look like I was genuinely laying low, and Luke would come. Dr. Mariana was certain of it. The detective is leaking the intel today at 3 p.m., Teresa had told me that morning. By 6, Luke will be pulling up. You can bet on it. It was 5:30 now. The sun was starting to set, casting long, creeping shadows through the surrounding forest, and then I heard the crunch of tires on the dirt road leading up to the cabin. My heart hammered against my ribs. I discreetly touched the tiny microphone taped inside the collar of my shirt. Teresa could hear me. She was listening. "You doing okay?" Her voice whispered through my earpiece. "Breathe. Stay calm. We're right here." The car stopped. A door opened and slammed shut. Footsteps on the wooden porch. And then the door swung open. Luke was standing there. He looked completely different from the man I saw at the airport. Thinner, with deep, dark bags under his eyes, a heavy shadow of stubble, his clothes wrinkled. He looked like a man standing on the absolute edge of a breakdown. When his eyes locked onto me, his face cycled through a rapid series of expressions: shock, relief, and then something icy, something intensely calculating. "Julia," he said, his voice coming out raspy. "You're alive." I didn't move. I stayed seated at the kitchen table. "I am." "And Peter?" "Safe, far away from you." He took a step inside, closing the door behind him. "Why did you run? Why are you hiding?" I let out a dry, humorless laugh. "You know exactly why." "I have no idea what you're talking about." I didn't stand up, just locked eyes with him. "You don't know about the men you sent to our house, about the fire, about the plan to murder us while you were conveniently out of town." His expression didn't even flinch. "You're talking crazy. The fire was an accident." "Was it?" I yelled, letting all the rage I'd been bottling up for days explode out of me. "I saw it, Luke. I saw the men walk in with the key you gave them. I saw them pour the gasoline. I saw our house burn down." Silence. Then Luke sighed heavily, ran a hand through his hair, and when he looked at me again, the mask had completely fallen off. "You weren't supposed to see that," he said with chilling calm. "You were supposed to be asleep. It was supposed to be quick, painless. You wouldn't have even felt a thing." My blood turned to ice hearing the casual confession, like he was talking about the weather. "How could you?" I whispered. "We're your family." He laughed, a bitter, exhausted laugh. "Family. Julia, you never got it, did you? Family is a burden. It's a responsibility I never wanted. And when the debts started piling up, when I realized I was drowning, I saw a way out, a simple solution." "Murdering us for insurance money?" I said, a wave of sickness washing over me. "$2 million, he said, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. Enough to wipe the slate clean and start fresh in another country, maybe. Away from here, away from all of this." "And Peter, your own son." For a split second, something resembling guilt flickered across his face, but it vanished instantly. "He would have had a quick death. No pain. That's more than a lot of kids get." I almost threw up right there. This man, this monster. I had shared a bed with him. I had loved him. "But you had to ruin everything," Luke went on, his voice turning vicious. "Running away, hiding out. Now I can't collect the payout without the bodies. And those loan sharks. They aren't going to wait much longer." He took another step toward me. "So you know what I have to do now, Julia." My hand instinctively reached back, grabbing for anything to defend myself with. "I have to finish the job." Before Luke could take another step, the kitchen door burst open. Teresa practically flew into the room, gun drawn, aiming it dead center at Luke's chest. "Police, hands in the air, right now." Luke froze, his eyes bugging out. He whipped his head around and saw not just Teresa, but 2 other armed operatives flooding in through the other doors, all of them aiming right at him. "On the ground, hands behind your head." For one terrifying second, I thought he was going to make a run for it. I saw his eyes darting, calculating the odds, searching for an exit. But there was nowhere to go. He was totally surrounded. Slowly, he dropped to his knees, then flattened himself face down on the old wooden floor. Teresa closed the distance instantly, pulling zip ties from her belt. Within seconds, Luke's hands were bound tight behind his back. "Luke Henry Ferreira," she barked in a purely official tone. "You are under arrest for attempted capital murder, first-degree arson, and conspiracy to commit murder. You have the right to remain silent." She kept reciting his Miranda rights, but I wasn't listening anymore. My legs gave out. I collapsed into the nearest chair, shaking violently. It was over. It was actually over. "Are you all right?" Teresa's voice sounded like it was coming from miles away. I couldn't speak. I just nodded. I watched as they dragged Luke out the door. He didn't fight back. He didn't say a word. He just shot me one final look before they took him away, and in that look I saw absolutely nothing. No remorse, no shame, just cold, bitter rage that he had been caught. After he was gone, Dr. Mariana walked in. "We got it all," she said, holding up a tablet displaying the recording. "Every word, every confession. It's airtight." Later that night, I was back at the safe house. Peter ran to me the second I walked through the door, wrapping his arms tight around my legs. "Mommy, you came back." I scooped him up, even though he was heavy, and held him as tight as I possibly could. "I came back, baby, and I'm never leaving again." "What about Daddy?" he asked in a tiny voice. "They said Daddy got arrested." I set him down and knelt, so we were eye to eye. "Peter, I need to tell you something very important. You are so brave and so smart, and that is the only reason we are alive today. You saved me when you told me what you heard. Do you understand that?" He nodded slowly. Your dad did some really bad things, things I can never forgive. And now he has to pay for what he did. He's going to go away for a very, very long time." "Forever?" Peter asked. "Probably forever, yes." I waited for the tears for the protests, but Peter just nodded his head again. "I knew he was bad," he whispered. "I knew for a long time, I just didn't know how to tell you." My heart completely shattered. "I am so sorry, my love. I am so sorry I didn't see it sooner. I'm sorry I didn't listen when you tried to tell me." "But you believed me in the end," he said, "when it mattered the most. You believed me." I hugged my son, finally letting the tears fall freely. The next few months were a blur of legal proceedings. Luke's case moved fast. With that mountain of evidence, there wasn't much to debate. His defense lawyers tried to plead temporary insanity. They tried to argue he was under extreme financial duress and wasn't thinking straight. But the tapes didn't lie. His voice, perfectly calm and calculating, admitting to everything. Explaining how he had planned to murder us quickly, painlessly. Talking about the $2 million like it was just a lottery jackpot. The jury took less than 2 hours to deliberate. Guilty on all counts. The sentence, life in prison without the possibility of parole. I was in the courtroom when the verdict was read. Luke didn't look at me. He kept his eyes locked straight ahead, his face a completely blank mask. When they led him away for the last time, I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not anger, not sadness. Just a massive, crushing exhaustion. "It's done," Dr. Mariana said beside me. "It's truly over now." But it wasn't, because there were still so many pieces to pick up. The house had burned to the ground. Everything we owned was ash. Our clothes, our personal belongings, our memories. Everything. But we discovered something very interesting during the legal fallout. Luke had lied about a lot of things, but he had told the truth about one thing. The house was fully paid off. He had lied to me about taking out the second mortgage. The truth was, my father had paid the house off in full before he died. And there was more. My dad had left behind other assets I knew nothing about. A modest savings account, some company stocks that had grown over the years. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to start over. "Your father was a very wise man," Dr. Mariana told me as we went over the paperwork. "He put everything into a trust fund that only you could touch. Luke never could have gotten his hands on this money, even if you were dead." "Why did my dad do that?" I asked. "Because he knew men like Luke. He just wanted to make absolutely sure you always had a safety net," she replied simply. With the payout from the burned house and the trust fund, I had enough to buy a small apartment in a completely different part of the city. Far from that gated community. Far from where it all happened. Far from the memories. Peter started at a new school. It was rough in the beginning. He had terrible nightmares. He'd wake up screaming in the middle of the night. We went to therapy. A lot of therapy. Both him and me. It took time, but slowly we started to heal. "Mommy," Peter asked me one night, 6 months after everything went down, "are we gonna be okay?" I was tucking him into bed, reading him a story just like I did every single night now. "We are," I answered. And for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I actually believed it. "We're going to be more than okay. We're going to be happy, promise. I promise." And I kept that promise. It wasn't easy. There were days I woke up having panic attacks, dead certain I saw Luke standing on the corner. Days when any man walking away from me triggered a flashback. Days when I beat myself up asking how I could have been so blind, so naive. But there were good days, too. Days when Peter laughed out loud, totally fearless. Days when we went to the park and just soaked up the sun. Days when I realized I was building a brand new life, a better life. A year after the fire, I got a letter. It was from Luke, sent from the penitentiary. I stared at the envelope for a long time, debating whether I should even open it. Finally, I tore it open. The letter was brief. "Julia, I know I have no right to ask for anything. I know what I did is unforgivable. But I need you to know I regret it. Not that I got caught, but what I planned to do." In my moments of clarity in here, I realized the monster I became. The debt, the desperation, it turned me into someone I don't even recognize. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I hope you and Peter can find peace. I hope you can be happy. Luke. I read the letter 3 times. Then I ripped it into tiny shreds and tossed it in the trash. Forgiveness. Maybe someday. But not today. Not anytime soon. Today I had to focus on myself and Peter, on building a life where we didn't have to be afraid. Where we could sleep peacefully without wondering if someone was plotting to hurt us. And we were pulling it off. 2 years had passed since that night at the airport. 2 years since Peter grabbed my arm and whispered those words that saved our lives. Our new apartment was small, but it was cozy. I decorated every inch of it with care, creating a space that was entirely ours. No ghosts of Luke, no shadows of the past. Peter was 8 years old now, taller, more confident. He was still a quiet, observant kid, but there was a lightness to him that wasn't there before. He smiled more, played more, made real friends at his new school. "Mom, can I go play hoops with Ryan after school?" he asked one morning while we were eating breakfast. "Sure, buddy. Just text me when you get there, okay?" "Okay." He planted a quick kiss on my cheek and bolted out the door to grab his backpack. I had changed too. I went back to work, something Luke had never let me do. Always insisting I didn't need to, that he provided everything. Now I was working as an administrative assistant at a medical clinic. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and gave me independence, and more importantly, it gave me purpose. But the biggest shift wasn't professional, it was emotional. I had learned to trust my gut again, to listen to that inner voice that tried to warn me when something was off, the voice I had silenced so many times during my marriage. I had also learned a lot about red flags, about control disguised as care, about isolation disguised as protection, about how abusers work slowly, severing your ties, chipping away at your confidence, making you utterly dependent on them. Luke had done all of that, and I let it happen because I thought it was love. Now I knew the difference. Dr. Mariana became more than just my lawyer. She became a friend. We grabbed lunch once a month, and she always checked in on how we were doing. "You're tough, Julia," she told me during one of those lunches. "Tougher than you think. A lot of women in your shoes wouldn't have survived, literally." "It wasn't me," I replied. "It was Peter. If it wasn't for him." "If it wasn't for you believing him," she corrected me. "You listened to your son when he needed you the most. That's what saved you both." She was right, and that was a lesson I'd carry with me forever. To listen, truly listen, especially to the small voices that sometimes know a whole lot more than we give them credit for. Teresa kept in touch, too. I found out she worked for an organization that helped women escape domestic violence situations. They offered protection sometimes, helped with relocation, provided legal resources. "Have you ever thought about sharing your story?" she asked me once. "What for?" To help other women, other mothers, so they can spot the signs you missed, so they know they can get out, even when it feels impossible. I thought long and hard about that. Part of me just wanted to leave it all in the rearview mirror, never speak of it again. But another part knew that maybe my nightmare could save someone else's life. So I started speaking, first in small support groups, then on online forums. Eventually, I gave an interview to a TV program focused on domestic abuse. The flood of messages I received afterward was overwhelming. Women saying they saw themselves in my story, that they recognized the warning signs in their own relationships, that they finally found the courage to pack up and leave before it was too late. One message in particular burned itself into my memory. My 5-year-old son told me last week that he doesn't like it when Daddy yells at me. I always pretended everything was fine, that they were just normal arguments. But after hearing your story, it hit me. My son is trying to warn me. And this time, I am going to listen. Thank you for sharing. You saved our lives. I broke down crying when I read that, because if my pain, my trauma, my absolute worst nightmare could stop another mother and child from going through what we did, then it was worth dragging it all back up. Peter knew about my decision to speak out. I had asked him if he was okay with it. Is it going to help other kids? He asked. I think so. Then it's okay. You can tell them. My boy, my little hero, always thinking of others. As for Luke, I heard very little about him after the sentencing. I heard through the grapevine that he wasn't adjusting well to prison life, that he had gotten into violent altercations with other inmates, that he spent most of his time in solitary confinement, strictly for his own protection. Part of me, a small, petty part, felt a dark sense of satisfaction hearing that. But mostly, I felt nothing. He had become entirely irrelevant to my life. Peter never asked about his dad. In the beginning, his therapist told me it was common for traumatized kids to suppress memories or feelings tied to their abuser. But as time went on, I realized it wasn't suppression. Peter had simply moved on. To him, Luke wasn't Dad anymore. He was just the man who tried to hurt us. And Peter had learned at the tender age of 6 that some people don't deserve a place in your life, even if they share your blood. A brutal lesson, but a vital one. I started dating again after a 1.5 years. Nothing serious, just a dinner here and there. I was terrified at first. Terrified that any man sitting across from me could be another Luke, hiding a monster behind a charming smile. But therapy helped. I learned about red flags, behavioral patterns, the stark difference between genuine care and disguised control. And I learned that not all men were like Luke, that there were good men in the world, men who respected boundaries, who actually listened, who didn't treat relationships like a sick power trip. I wasn't looking to get married or build a traditional family again. Maybe I never would. But I was open to connection, to companionship, to the possibility that love could exist without a lingering sense of danger. Peter met a few of the guys I went out with. I was always incredibly careful about it. I never introduced anyone as a boyfriend or built up expectations. It was always just, Mom is getting dinner with a friend. Once, after one of them left, Peter turned to me and said, "He seems cool, Mom, but you don't have to find anyone you know. We're good, just the two of us." I know, buddy, and you're right. We are good. Because we were. We truly were. Our little apartment was full of laughter now, full of music, full of life. Peter had a fish tank in his room with 3 goldfish he took care of religiously. I had potted plants scattered around the living room, something I never had the energy for when I was with Luke. We made homemade pizzas on Friday nights, constantly throwing weird toppings on them that sometimes worked and sometimes definitely didn't. We hit the park on Sundays, fed the ducks by the pond. We had our own little goofy traditions that belonged to nobody but us. We were happy. It wasn't the life I pictured when I stood at the altar with Luke. It wasn't the traditional white picket fence family with 2 kids and summer vacations I dreamed of when I was younger. But it was better. It was real. It was safe. It was ours. And finally, after years of living on autopilot of merely existing, I was actually living. On a Thursday morning, 3 years after that night at the airport, Peter hit me with a question. "Mom, can we adopt a dog?" I was flipping pancakes. I froze spatula in midair. A dog? Yeah, like the one we saw at the shelter last week. The brown mutt. Do you remember him? I remembered. We had gone to the animal shelter as part of a school project Peter was doing. He had completely fallen in love with a medium-sized, goofy-looking dog with ears way too big for his head. Peter dogs are a ton of work. You have to walk them, take them to the vet. I know I can help. I promise I'll walk him every day and clean up his messes and everything. I looked at my son. His eyes were shining with a level of excitement I hadn't seen in years. And it hit me. He was asking for more than just a dog. He was asking for another piece of normalcy, another shred of proof that life had gone back to normal, that we were allowed to have good, simple things just like any other regular family. Okay, I said. Okay like I'll think about it, or okay like yes? I smiled. Okay like yes. We'll go get him on Saturday. Peter let out a cheer and tackled me in a hug so hard, we almost both went down. On Saturday, we drove back to the shelter. The brown dog was still there, looking at us like he had been waiting all along. When Peter walked up to the cage, the mutt started wagging his tail so hard, his entire back half was shaking. He remembers me, Peter yelled. We adopted him that same day. Peter named him Buddy. It was a classic name for a dog that was all lanky legs and floppy ears, but it was exactly what Peter wanted. So Buddy it was. Having Buddy in the house changed the vibe in ways I never expected. The apartment got louder, messier, and infinitely more alive. Buddy slept at the foot of Peter's bed, shadowed him from room to room, and waited anxiously by the front door every day until Peter got home from school. And one night, I overheard Peter talking to Buddy in his room. You know, Buddy, we went through some really bad stuff a while ago. Stuff I can't even tell you because you're a dog and you wouldn't get it. But everything's okay now. Mom says we're safe, and I believe her. My throat tightened hearing that. My boy who had carried so much fear, so much heavy anxiety, finally felt safe again. And it was true. We were safe. Later that same month, I got a piece of news I never saw coming. Dr. Mariana called me. Julia, there's something I need to tell you about Luke. My stomach did a flip. What is it? He's very sick. Aggressive cancer. The prison doctors are giving him 6 months tops. I sat there in dead silence, letting the words process. He's asking to see you and Peter. One last time. No, Julia, I said. No. My voice came out steadier than I expected. He forfeited the right to see us the second he planned to put us in the ground. I am not subjecting Peter to that, and I'm not subjecting myself to it either. I understand. I just thought you had a right to know. After I hung up, I sat alone in the living room for a long time, just thinking. Luke was dying. The man who had been my husband, the father of my child, was rotting away in a prison cell, entirely alone. I felt like I should feel something. Pity, spite, grief, but all I felt was relief. Relief that soon there wouldn't even be a theoretical chance of him ever walking out of those gates. Relief that the final microscopic thread connecting us was going to be severed for good. I didn't tell Peter. He didn't need to know. Not yet. Maybe when he was older, if he ever asked, but not today. Luke died 4 months later. I got a formal notification letter in the mail. No ceremony, no final goodbyes. I threw the letter straight into the trash and kept right on living my life. Because that's what I had now. A life. A real, breathing life built on a rock-solid foundation of honesty, safety, and a fierce, unbreakable love between a mother and her son. Peter was thriving. His grades were stellar. He had solid friends. He was still in therapy, but it was more for maintenance now than out of sheer crisis. And I was flourishing in ways I never thought possible. I got promoted at the clinic. I was socking away money to maybe buy a bigger place down the road. I was seeing someone, a PE teacher from Peter's school. He was kind, incredibly patient, and he didn't mind taking things slow. He respected my boundaries and my scars. I didn't know if we were going the distance, but for the first time in years, I was willing to put myself out there. Willing to believe that love didn't have to walk hand in hand with terror. One night, almost 4 full years after that fateful night at the airport, Peter and I were sitting out on our tiny apartment balcony drinking hot cocoa. Buddy was curled up fast asleep at our feet. "Mom," Peter said out of nowhere, "can I ask you something?" "Of course, baby." "Do you ever regret believing me that night?" The question completely blindsided me. "Why would you ask that?" He shrugged, staring down into his mug. "Because our whole life changed. We lost our house, all our stuff. We had to run away and hide. You had to work super hard. We had to start completely over." I set my mug down and turned to face him fully. "Peter, listen to me very closely. The absolute best decision I have ever made in my entire life was believing you that night. Because if I hadn't, we wouldn't be sitting here right now. We wouldn't have this amazing life we have now. Yes, we lost things, but we gained something so much more important." "What's that?" "Freedom. Safety. The chance to actually be happy." I reached over and squeezed his hand. "I don't regret it for a single second." He smiled, that wide, beautiful smile that he only really found after the dust settled. "Me neither," he said. "I think we're way better off now. Just the two of us." "And Buddy?" I laughed. "And Buddy." We sat there in a comfortable silence, watching the city lights blink in the distance, and I realized he was dead right. We were better. So much better. Life had dragged me through the deepest pits of hell. It had shown me that the man I loved was capable of unimaginable, horrific atrocities. It had stripped away everything I thought I needed to survive. But it had also handed me back something I didn't even realize I'd lost during my marriage: my own strength, my voice, my fierce capability to protect my son and myself. It had given me the Peter I knew today, brave, sharp, incredibly resilient. It had given me this simple, beautiful life where waking up every morning was a choice to be happy, a choice to keep moving forward, a choice to never let the past dictate our future. And above all else, it had taught me to listen, to pay attention to the warning signs, to trust my gut and to listen to the small voices that sometimes know far more than all the adults in the room combined. Because in the end, it was a 6-year-old boy who saved us, a boy who found the courage to tell me what he heard, even when he wasn't sure I'd believe him, and a mother who, for the first time in a very long time, decided to truly listen. That one decision, that one split-second choice to believe the frantic whispers of a terrified child in a dark parking lot changed the trajectory of our entire existence. It saved our lives, and it gave us a second chance to do life right. Together, safe, and finally truly happy. Now, if you enjoyed this story, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments which part left your jaw on the floor. Oh, and don't forget to become a channel member for access to exclusive videos I don't post anywhere else. I'll see you there.